right, I will call to order the meeting of the Nantucket Memorial Airport Commission for November 12th, 2019. This meeting is being both audio and video recorded. Are there any comments on the agenda? Hearing none, it is adopted. You, I believe, have the minutes, correct, Katie? You have the minutes for the October 8th meeting. So are there any additions or corrections?
Didn't see any.
Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried unanimously. May I have a motion, please, to ratify the warrants of October 23rd, 2019 and November 6th, 2019?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried unanimously. Is there public comment at this time? Hearing none. Pending leases and contracts, Mr. Rafter?
Before I get started on that, Dan, I'd just like to thank Noah for filling in for me last month. I saw he did a yeoman's job on that, so I appreciate it. On the
He did a
pending,
great job.
it's nice to know you can take a day off once in a while.
No, I wouldn't go that far.
So first one we have is a lease amendment for Tidal Creek Corporation for $122,844, and that's based on the survey that was done for the increased size of the land. Next is a catering license agreement with Island Kitchen for $1,500, and that is to be able to cater aircraft at the airport. Then we have a contract with Jacobs Engineering for $1,074,400, and that is for the design of taxiway Echo. The next one, I would ask the commission to authorize either the chair or vice chair to execute a contract with Levangie Electric Company. They were the low bidder that we awarded the security project to for $1,690,000. And we have to negotiate, work out the contract and some funding items, but I'd like to ask your indulgence so that we don't have to wait for the next meeting, that we're hoping to have these contracts within a week to 10 days. And I'd like to keep that project moving on schedule so that we can get it accomplished before the season. And the next one, the fuel farm, is still pending. We're waiting the final scope language. We're working with Chief Murphy at Fire Department on the fire suppression system, some options that we have there. The last one is a contract with Community Data Platform for $25,000 for a leakage analysis, and that is a handout. It's not in your packet, and it's essentially a leakage study. If I'm going to try to explain this, if I mess it up, then I'll jump in, but it's to identify the folks that are using the boat to then fly out of either Providence or Boston, and look at that as well as the shoulder season and identify what our leakage is. So it's not only for the benefit of JetBlue, but I would say some other competitors that are looking at year-round service too.
Also maybe summer service in Philadelphia.
Yes, we already actually have some work going on about the Philadelphia service, so I was wrong when I explained it to you earlier.
Now, you're not looking for any approval on the Jacobs, the second Jacob Engineering one on the field?
No, not for the fuel, not this time.
Are there any questions or comments on these?
I have a couple of questions on the data one, please. I did find out that we will own it, but are we going to own all of it? I see that under.
No, there's language in the agreement that I think the ownership remains with the data platform, but we have the rights to it. Or
But is it going to cost us to have those rights?
no, it's part. It's
You sure?
Yes, it says it right here.
All right. I did read it, but I wasn't.
The payment for this contract, that's what it is.
Okay. All right. And are they able to sell this information to other people, to other companies, or?
I don't know if that's addressed in here. Yeah.
I didn't see it, but that I just got this and I didn't have a lot of
Sure,
time
that
to
what
read it.
the underlying data they can use for whatever they want.
Okay.
It's the report that we've asked for.
Number 2 in the agreement, Jeanette.
I saw that, but I wanted to be sure that it is, we have the right and they can't, you know, that they're not going to charge us again is what I'm concerned about.
No.
No, it gives us the exclusive license to use it.
Okay. As long as we're sure that's right, correct. Thank you.
I have a comment. I'm not sure that I'm completely on board with a $25,000 expenditure for a study to try to bring in, a private flight. In other words, I think that, you have capitalism. If there's money to be made here, JetBlue will figure that out. And I think we could tell them that there's money to be made here and that there's this without spending $25,000.
Well, if I may, Commissioner, my history with Air Service Development, and I courted Southwest for probably 10 to 15 years. And at every meeting with Southwest, John Giamatti would tell me what I don't know. The airlines, when you go to meet with them at these speed dating meetings, they know a lot of things. They have all the data. They want to know what you don't know. And what the data platform has been able to provide us is that information. NOAA has taken it to other airlines, and they were very surprised with it. It was a higher level of detail than they know about the makeup of the customers here. So, just to your point, I understand the capitalistic part of it, but the airlines have so much data, and they put us on. When you go to meet with them, they have a list. It might be 5 or 6 pages long. They say, "Okay, where are you?" And you're somewhere in the list, and you're competing with the other airports for their airplanes. So I just want to lay that out there. This is information that they don't have.
Any other comments or questions?
I kind of agree with Arthur. I think that's why some of my questions were asked, is the $25,000.
Seems like a lot of money to me.
I will say that one JetBlue flight at an 85% load factor is approximately $26,000 just in PSCs. Not landing fees, not ramp fees, not concession, not fuel. So
21, could you explain that?
85% load factor at 6 weeks on a 100-seat airplane at $4.50 per passenger. It's about $26,000. So the PSC alone offsets the cost of the study. If we were to get one flight on an E1, which, by the way, JetBlue did recently load their system, and they did add another flight. On our peak days, we're going to be up to 11.
I thought there was 2. I thought we had 9 before.
It varies on the peak days.
I guess, we can agree to disagree, I think, on this one. If we could take the contract separate, I just don't support personally this one. I think that for us to spend that kind of money so that they can also, I understand we get service, but then that they also are profiting and they're, under capitalism, I would think that if this was a good enough market for them, that, you could tell them that. And then, anyway, that's just my position.
Okay.
I just reiterate the point that there are a lot of other airports competing for the same airplane.
I can see both sides.
So, all right, we'll take the first 3 as a group, and then we'll take Levangie as a separate one and community data platforms as a separate one. Is there a motion to approve the lease amendment with Tidal Creeks, the catering license agreement with Island Kitchen, and the contract with Jacobs Engineering Group?
So moved.
Taxiway
Second.
sign service. Any further questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried unanimously. I will entertain a motion to approve the contract with Levangie Electric Company, Inc. for the safety and security project access control upgrades, and with the further stipulation that either the chair or the vice chair may sign the contract by himself if when it is received.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Further questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried unanimously. Community data platform for a leakage study to analyze airport data for the various purposes described by the manager. Is there any further discussion? Is there a motion to approve it?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye. I'm opposed.
All right, I believe it carries 3-2, is that correct?
Correct.
Everybody's understanding, thank you. All right, moving on to crew quarters development.
In your packet is the financial risk analysis model that was prepared by McFarland Johnson. There's a number of assumptions in there, but it's a very well done model. You have the PDF. We actually have the one that can manipulate based on whatever assumptions you put in. But you'll see they did a lot of homework, a lot of research. They followed through on the scenarios we asked them to look at with regard to occupancy. I would recommend that we put together a subcommittee meeting to look at this in detail, and I think try to get some agreement on what the base assumptions we may want to go forward with. And I don't know what everybody, like, the subcommittee would be long range planning subcommittee.
Andrea, what's your availability for the first, during Thanksgiving week? Are you here or not?
25th.
I'm here, I think. That's pretty definite.
All right, well, let's tentatively schedule it for, shall we say, Tuesday morning? Is that
Sure.
all right with everybody?
Yep.
I'm going to ask Katie to solidify that. So,
Maybe the 26th.
26, yes.
and again,
Andrea and myself.
I think you'll see the model is very well done. I plugged in a few different assumptions to play with it. It works. It ties back to everything. And when Jamie looks at it and says it's okay, then I know it's good. But I think there's a lot of room for thought on what the assumptions may be, what rents may be, what occupancy there we might experience, and so on. So.
And that would be what time? Did we have a time or?
It can be
9.
9, let's make it 9 o'clock.
Okay. AM.
Good clarification, thank you. All right, anything, do you want to say anything else on it? Does anybody have any initial questions or comments on the study?
What is the length of time that you're thinking? I mean, I see that we're gonna do 2 units for 4, but,
We're looking at the initial assumption is 2 buildings, 4 units. So it's a total of 2 bedrooms and 2 3-bedrooms, side by side units. And I'm sorry, what was your question, the length of time?
I mean, I see that we're gonna have more supposedly when I scan through this, as I say, not getting this in time.
The zoning is up to a number of, I think, 13 buildings.
Okay,
And the reason they did the different levels there is they show the economies of scale and how, the more you build, the cheaper it becomes to charge your rent and so on. But then you have to put so much more up front or finance it. So these are some of the things we want to discuss in the meeting and try to come up with an agreement as to where this fits in our priorities for the capital projects.
That was the idea there, is that some other contractor is going to build these buildings
Yes.
and, establish the financial parameters, and we're going to either approve that or not approve that.
Right.
We're not doing any building ourselves. We're going to just lease the land
And
out.
we're not even going to be managing. We're going to be a separate thing.
Right.
Well, I must say, those numbers kind of blew me away.
Yeah, well, and again, that's what I say. I think their assumption for the construction is pretty high based on some information we have. But that's why we want to get together and try to develop a consensus on what we think the assumptions may be, so that we can then determine where it falls in priorities of capital. How much money do we have to put up? How much are we going to put down? There's a lot of questions, and when I ran through the numbers, it's a pretty expensive proposition, especially when you add in the caretaking and things. So.
What kind of a need do we see there's going to be for airport personnel to live there?
Tony, that's the $1 million question. What do we have now and what do we see, I think, are going to be the big questions. We have a challenge, obviously. We found out the last time we tried to hire the security coordinator, we couldn't do that without somebody that had housing. So we limit ourselves to the resource pool that's on island for senior level management positions. So there's some level of demand for that. We have current employees that actually live in Hyannis and come over and stay a few nights a week, and their families over in Hyannis. So there are all the things we want to kind of discuss, and we don't want to go overboard and build, 13 units, and we can't afford, we don't know if we can afford to do.
Yeah, every time you turn around in Nantucket, it goes from, 800 a square foot to 1,200 a square foot,
Well,
building any
at the
commercial
same
buildings.
time, the inventory is increasing too. So it's a cat and mouse type of game here that we have to look at.
But it can also include safety, security, that's not directly
Yeah,
airport.
we can offer it to police and fire as well.
Okay.
And you'll see in one of the scenarios, they're holding out one unit for, let's say, just senior level personnel. If we have an opening or something that we need to advertise, we want to compete on a nationwide basis. So,
Do you have any sense of who might be interested in building buildings under these circumstances? Is there any-
well, and again, yeah, as you get into the bigger numbers, obviously there's developers. I don't know that there's some small developers that may be interested in a smaller project or partner with another one that they're doing on island. Or we could end up doing just a middle person with a direct prefab home builder.
Seems to me if I was going to do this, I'd like a guarantee from the airport they're going to have so much rent before I'd even think about it. Putting in a $10 million project, I'd like to see a cash flow established and guaranteed for 10 years.
Well, that's what this is doing. This is showing what the risk analysis is with or without the cash flow. Either way, it's not going to be their risk. It's going to be the airports.
Yeah.
So they're not going to need to see it as much as
We are.
you do.
We need to understand it better than I certainly do now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
And if you all want to come to that meeting too, you're welcome to.
This is Tuesday of Thanksgiving week.
Yeah.
My birthday.
I'd love to go to the meeting, but I'm going to be in Boston, sadly.
well, I think there'll be further discussion too.
That'll be the last discussion. You'll have another bite of the apple.
Yeah, I'd like one, yeah. This whole thing seems very dubious to me, but nevertheless.
Well, and to be honest with you, Tony, that's why we had this model done, so we could at least evaluate what our risk is.
Sure.
So,
My sense, if I may, just, and we, look forward to discussing it more, is I like how they did the model, and I like the, not really based on anything, but just a feeling, of 4 units, of the 2, that we could get started, that perhaps you don't put in all of your infrastructure, you do a stub road in, you bring in just enough sewer and water, it could be extended, you size it appropriately, but you kind of just get into the property, you build 2 of them, put in just enough parking, just enough road, get the utilities in, and kind of see where that goes, right? And then you fill those, you see how the overall project, well, it maybe costs you a little bit more because of an economy of scale. On a per square foot basis, it's not going to cost as much as the overall, and so I'm and I think that, again, I don't know that I have or any of us maybe do the exact what is the appropriate number, but I feel like somewhere around 4 might be a good sort of safety net for airport management and operations.
I think right now at this point in time, we could fill 4 without that.
Yeah, and I'm not
At the right price, and again, that's where we have to agree on.
right, and I'm not only worried about just filling them, especially at a 4 level, but perhaps one open even part of the time as you're, in terms of flexibility that may provide with management or certain lease terms. In other words, if you have to get somebody out, for example, for something else that is
And that's why we had them run the different scenarios with
Yeah.
the occupancy rates.
It's easier said than done.
I'm a landlord as
But
well.
again, this model is a good tool. It gives us the ability to say, okay, assume an occupancy rate of this, or set aside that.
Right,
So,
thank you.
And are they like 2-story? They're not, is that what they were getting? I'm sorry.
2-story, but side-by-side duplex.
Okay, so somewhat like the one maybe going down on Old South Road. I'm looking at spices here. Old South Road that's just been put up by the meat and fish market on that order, or is it going to be more like out on the Richmond property?
I
Or
think
do
it's
you know?
kind of like Park Circle, maybe. I'm
Park
not sure
Circle,
how the
okay,
next
Park
one-
Circle's
like
agreeable.
Park
Thank you.
Circle,
Yeah.
yeah, something
We
along
haven't
those.
even gotten close to.
No, I
the
know that, but I'm
design.
just trying to get some sense to, some
Yeah.
feeling of it.
Could I get a printout of that report?
A, what
The
you say?
analysis?
Yeah, that would be
Yeah.
helpful, actually, I would like that.
What
too.
did-
Or
did
there's
Ann
one
get
here, but,
Oh, okay. So-
We'll fight over it.
yeah.
Yes.
But I think it would be helpful.
Look
Yeah.
look at the real picture. Paper, yeah.
You want to go through this and pull it out.
Wow, you're giving in?
All right, anything else on that for now? Obviously, there'll be more to come. Next, the Town Government Study Committee.
I attended the most recent meeting of the Town Government Study Committee, and in your packet is a draft warrant article that Legal has prepared, essentially allowing the select board to appropriate funds for capital items at the airport, as has been discussed previously with the commission. I believe that Mr. Brescher from the Government Study Committee will be asking us to attend their meeting, which is November 18th at 3 p.m. I've also sent it on to the Finance Director and through him to the Finance Committee and the Capital Committee, and I left a message today for the Town Manager and sent an email, or spoke with Erica Mooney, because I know that she's trying to get the warrant articles in, so I want to make sure they're on board, and we're going to need to do some coordination with their town council and others. So the draft is in there. If you have any comments, please.
What
let
is
me know.
I sort of get the idea that it's sort of part of the deal, but what's the genesis of this veto by
10.
10 voters?
I don't know the genesis. I know it's in the one for the real estate, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that Mina, the attorney, had indicated, yeah, that's either part of a charter, bylaw, or something that I think it's a requirement. I got that sense.
I'd love to know what the the basis of that is. Excuse me.
That meeting is Monday, November 18th.
Tentatively, yes, at this time, it's November.
I'm gonna be out
3
of town,
p.m.
so if anybody else.
I would like to attend that. I don't know where or
Right
when.
here.
Upstairs
upstairs.
or
In
here.
time.
Here or
Here
upstairs.
upstairs. 3
Time,
p.m.
3 p.m.? Good.
Anybody else have any reactions to the language per se? That be helpful. Hearing none.
Well, it's, yeah, I mean, if you do come up with any thoughts or comments, please let us know. We discussed it with legal and went through a few things, and so it will require a ballot vote, and it is has to go to the state home rule petition too.
Okay. Well, as we discussed this morning, my concern is getting the Board of Selectmen at least to put it in as a placeholder as the sponsors of the article. Because we don't really want to be putting it in as a citizens article, but unfortunately the time is getting pretty short.
That's why I asked Erica to try to put it in as a placeholder.
And did she indicate that was something that she could do, or would
She was
work?
gonna check with Libby, to make
Okay.
sure.
Thank you.
And again, I think our staff, our next steps are the educational process.
Exactly.
If it does in fact get in there, we need to promote and educate everybody as to why and what the benefits are and why it's not working. A perfect example is our security project. When special town meeting, we couldn't get a quorum, so we had to delay the design, which pushed back getting a grant and put us in a very bad position with FAA to try to push them to get a design-only grant. It was very challenging, and every project going forward is that way. We were fortunate, we have some money for Echo and the security, but the way bids are coming in, the bids for the security, our budget was 1.4 million, came in at 1.69, so we have to go find $290,000. And there were two bidders. The next bidder was $1.1 million higher. And in speaking with people in various areas, they said that's the way bids have been coming in over on the Cape, especially. They said there's just a lot of business and some people are putting in high bids if they're the only one to get it. So. Okay, move on.
Let's move on.
The declaration of surplus property for Airport Road, that is to allow us to begin the process of developing an RFP for the concession intent for next year. We operated under certain circumstances last year because it was under a certain threshold, but now we're going to put it out as the full concession, and first step is to do the declaration of surplus.
Is there a specific language that's required for that,
For,
the declaration?
It's in here.
yeah, it's standard language for all of them.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
It just has the square footage and the intent.
I would move to endorse the declaration of surplus property before us for the 153 square feet of general concession space inside the main terminal.
I'll second
Is
that.
there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried unanimously. First quarter update.
First quarter update should be in your packet as well. Overall, the airport did slightly better than last year, but I will caution everybody, it's still just the first quarter. And there's, a few items we need to pay particular attention to. The revenues were up slightly by about 4% or $394,000, driven primarily by rental income, which was up $232,000. We hit the cap on the fuel revolver in the first quarter, which is not uncommon, again, because of our peak season. The expenses, the report indicates they're down by $744,000. However, there's an item that's missing from this quarter that was in last year's first quarter, and it was for the retirement, which accounted for $637,000. So expenses
It's actually budgeted this year for $692,000.
Yeah, so it didn't hit yet. That was a timing issue. General insurance expenses were up $27,000, and there's a typo in the report. It indicates that debt service was down 13%, when in fact debt service was only down 3%, but the net was a 13% change. So, yeah, so the overall expenses are being reported 13% against the, I'm sorry. So it was 3% for debt service, 13% for the entire thing. Any questions on the first quarter before I go into the budget? Your packet has a very, very rough first draft of the budget. I say that because we haven't had communication with the department heads and we want to get their feedback. But we had a meeting with town administration last week. They were very pleased with the way it was put together. They're in the process of converting from the Excel spreadsheets into a software program called OpenGov that they're utilizing. Jamie's done a very good job putting that in. We're still showing a slight profit, but again, we have no feedback yet. Our goal again is, and I'm fairly certain we can accomplish this, but we will not have any reliance on retained earnings or the fuel revolver. So we're going to proceed under those goals. And again, the primary driver for the revenue is the increase in land, the additional land that we did, and some fair market value increases that we've negotiated. So we will be getting back to you again a couple of times before the final approval of the budget. And one last thing on the finance side of the house, holiday sales report for Columbus Day. Just like a number of other businesses on the island, we took a big hit because of the storm, and our sales were down 46% or $143,000 over the Columbus Day holiday. Any questions before I? On the report?
Any? All right, go ahead.
On the project side of the house, the Bunker Road infiltrators are due to be installed this week, and contract's been executed with the existing tenant that's actually there. And we're working with Jacobs Engineering on an overall plan, if you will, for drainage and maintenance of the drain system. And we're looking at potential of putting in another piece to that infiltrator system to capture more of the fines. We've been approached by Town DPW. They're looking at locating an infiltrator to capture the drainage on Monahasset, and we're looking at potential alternatives if there's something that we may be able to help them. The tent or additional hold room, the fabric has been removed and stored, and we're beginning the process already to prepare for next season to have that reinstalled. The airport layout plan update and geometry issue, we received and responded to FAA comments on our recommendation for converting it to runway 1230 to taxiway Charlie. The security project, as we discussed under the contracts, we received the bids for phase 1 and working with finance to address the funding issues. We're also moving forward with phase 2 bidding, which we should have bids in January, at which time we'll submit an application for FAA funding. So there's 2 phases to the security project. And that, again, has to do with one of our challenges. We have to wait for town meeting to get the second round of appropriation to complete the entire project. So it's a very challenging thing to time these together. The EIS, we're hoping to have the draft. It was an issue within 2 weeks, but I think the schedule for the ENF is being pushed back slightly, so working to get that done. The fuel farm rehabilitation, I have to circle back with Noah. There was a call this afternoon with the fire chief to look at an alternative fire suppression system, and once that is determined how we're going to proceed, we'll finalize the scope with Jacobs on design for that. Taxiway Echo, we received 30% design. Permitting process is moving forward well. The soils investigation and survey work has been completed, and we're staying in touch with FAA and coordinating along the entire process. And we just received a revised estimate today for Taxiway Echo, and I wish I wrote it down. I forget, but it was, I want to say in the 15 to 17 million. It wasn't the 20 million. So again, as they start gathering more information, they will find that a little tighter.
Let's not spend the extra money when the bid comes in.
Yeah, well, let's see what the bids come in.
Yeah.
We have a request for expression of interest out on the street. It's advertised, and that's for hangar development. The responses are due December 6th. We're waiting quotes for appraisal work to be done, working on the freight hangar RFP, development of an RFP for the concession, as I mentioned earlier, and a number of other items, legal services, fuel farm inspections, on-call engineering, parking management services, and a number of other leases. We're working on the updates on those. On the operations side of the house, we're converting our FBO software from Total FBO to X1, and of course we're doing that this time of year as opposed to in the May, June, July timeframe. So we want to kick the tires and see how that works, the functional aspect of it, the delivery of the service, as well as the back of the house and the credit card aspect. On October 15th, a number of staff members attended the IANIS Career Fair and did an awesome job. I was unable to make it, but I saw the pictures and some other things, and very well done. And I think they're all here, at least 3 of them that were there, Noah, Katie, and Lil. And Lil, I guess, pulled most of that together. We had a nice exhibit and everything, so good job. The winter season, we're starting the preparation. Well, we've been doing the preparation throughout the summer, but we have our pre-season meeting on November 20th with all the users. We're also looking into an automated processing system for lost and found. Good news of that is it's free of charge, so we're going to be investigating that. As I mentioned earlier, JetBlue has loaded their schedule and they are indicating a peak of 11 flights per day. And one last note on the operational side, today the operations and maintenance staff coordinated with the school department for the high school photo, and they took it on, but they had the children on the runway, the high school, which I understand this class may be the largest they've had. It's up to about 150. So you'll probably see that. I want to give you the heads up before you see it coming out in the yearbooks, whatever. Any questions before I go on to statistics?
Was that done with a drone?
I'm sorry?
Was the picture done with a drone?
Were they able to get the drone up, do we know? They were supposed to, but I know they had to lift and a drone. They were gonna try to do it with a drone, but I'm not sure if that was able to be done or
Was it done today, did you say?
not. Today, this morning, yes.
Was it
When it
sun?
was 60.
It was warm when I first started my
When the weather
day.
was nice.
Yeah, smart move.
Okay, on the statistical side of the house, the operations were up 22.7% roughly over last September, and year-to-date up 14.17. Southwest ramp operations were up slightly by 0.8. Employments were up 4.27% over last September and 9% year-to-date. Cape Air saw a 10% decrease in employments. United employments were up 45% for September. Delta saw a 23% decrease, or 15 passengers over last September. JetBlue had a 9% increase, or 776 passengers, or employments rather, for September. Nantucket Air was up 18%, or 133 passengers. Tradewind was down 10%, and Retrix also was down 10%. American was up 18%, or 87 passengers. And in the Washington market, let me just go through the totals here. Total DCA market was up 24%, or 209, and JetBlue was up 28%, American was up 17%, so DCA was doing well. In the Boston market, Cape Air had a 1% decrease, or 33 passengers. JetBlue was up 48%, or 619, and the market total was up 12% for 586 passengers. New Bedford traffic continued to drop. It was down 36%, or 278 passengers. United in the Newark market was up 45%, or 277 passengers. In the White Plains market, Cape Air experienced a 17% increase. JetBlue carried 1,081. It was the first year in that market for JetBlue, and Retrix had 25 passengers. Total market saw an increase of about 1,130 passengers. The Hyannis market for September, Cape Air was down 94%, or 191 passengers. Nantucket Air was up 18%, or 133. Retrix was down 11%, or 103 passengers, and overall, Hyannis market was down 9%, or 161. Again, we're continuing to see the boat market eating away at the Hyannis market there. In JFK, JetBlue was down 23%, or 1,522 passengers. For the LaGuardia market, it looks like there was a move over towards LaGuardia. American was up 56%. Delta was down 23%. JetBlue flew 439 passengers. Total market was up 250%, or 500 passengers. So we saw a shift from the a little bit from the JFK over to White Plains and LaGuardia in September. Vineyard traffic continued to decline and was down 68%, or 81 passengers. The jet fuel sold for September was down 0.4%, or 804 gallons. Year to date, it's up 3.56. For October, it was up 12.48, or 8,330 gallons for October over last year.
Even with Columbus Day being a bust.
Yes, we still had an increase in sales for October. Avgas was up 6.41% for September. Year to date, it was down 3.4. October, it was down 12.35. And the freight for September was down 3.7% over last September, but year to date, it's up slightly at about 0.5. Noise complaints were up from 21 to 38 last September. I'm working on getting that updated. So. And we also, under the personnel report, the town held its annual employee recognition event last week, and we had a number of folks who have some significant anniversaries. I think David's up to 30 years, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh,
So we have a number of 20, 15-year. Katie, you got one, didn't you? No, not this year. Oh, it was Deb Crooks. So it was a very nice event. The town puts it on each year. It was over at VFW, and they do a great job. So that's my report.
Thank you. Any questions? Comments? Let's move into commissioners' comments then. Any comments?
actually, I have a quick question. What is Allies freight business? Are they just gathering stuff here? How much are they flying? How much do they use other carriers?
Well, we have it on the report up there. They're climbing continuously. They're actually providing the flight and carrying the freight over, but they're starting to garner quite a bit of business.
I think they do Chinese as well.
Chinese food.
Chinese food? Good.
What
I know
was-
they do some
Do you
tires. and
remember,
some
David,
oil
what
parts.
the poundage was for Cape and Islands air freight at the end there?
I'd have to go back and look at
Just
that, what the numbers were.
I'm just curious where we are in relation to the other.
The way it
the way
did
it
before.
was. It seems to me this is still less, but that's my very bad
Yeah,
memory.
There's still, the boat's still taking quite a bit of freight.
But it's also interesting how much Cape Air carries.
That's newspaper.
But some of it, but they also
Newspapers in the
carry,
mail,
no, mail's separate.
Nails separate.
Yeah. then it's just the newspapers. I think it's two
Well, they
chapters.
do carry, I guess they don't, I don't know if they, but they carry stuff from Boston. They take stuff from here to Boston. I don't know. if
Small
it's-
medical things are what are allowed, but there's not a lot that goes through it. The bulk of theirs is various newspapers.
I do have a comment because you kind of glossed over our personnel and they're there for so long or whatever. I think that we should mention that. I didn't see anything in the Nantucket paper, but that doesn't mean anything. And I just think it's good to give everybody recognition.
We're going to have a small ceremony for those who couldn't make.
But I think,
the event, too.
I would agree with Mrs. Topham that maybe we should do it in the commission meeting.
Okay.
Yes, I definitely think it
That's
needs
what
to be
you're
known,
driving at,
exactly. You know, they're our employees, we appreciate them, but I think people need to know who the employees are and that have given so much
We'll
dedication.
get them right here in front of the television camera.
One of the challenges with the event was that a number of them were working or off island.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
But at least to mention their names
yeah,
is,
absolutely,
Yeah.
I'll get that.
Thank you.
Anybody else have a comment? We're gonna talk about the housing at the Long Range Planning Committee meeting. One of the things we're gonna talk about too is you know, we have some retained earnings from last year and so on, probably have some from this year, but the question is, what do we do with them? Do we use them as a rainy day fund for operating expenses? Do we use them for housing? Do we use them for some of these as our share of some of these big capital projects that are coming up? I think we need to probably first have some recommendations and then make some, policy decisions by the commission on how this money should be used to the extent we have any control over
I
it.
agree.
And if I may, Dan, I think that previously a decision similar to that was made with regard to PFC, where we transfer over $400,000 a year and apply it to the capital. So we have some kind of guidance on our financial policy.
Exactly. And I thought there was a third thing we were going to talk about at that.
There wasn't.
Do you remember what it was, Precious? No, we'll figure it out.
An agenda together for that meeting.
All right, is there public comment at this time? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to go into executive session under general law, chapter 30A, section 21A, to review and consider for possible release the minutes of the executive session of October 8th, 2019, and also consider for release all the enumerated minutes that are set forth on the agenda. Under clause 3, to discuss strategy with respect to the litigation regarding the Gatto claim, where the chair has determined that an open session may have detrimental effect on the litigating position of the airport commission. Under clause 3, also to discuss strategy with respect to the litigation regarding Walsh, where the chair has determined that an open session may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the airport commission. And under clause 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining, where the chair has determined that an open session may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the airport commission, not to return to open session.
So
I'll
moved.
make that motion.
Thank you. There's a second.
Second.
How do you vote, Mr. Muscara?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Sparrow, and the chair votes aye. Thank you all.